أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لم تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد. فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Very good job. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We have some poetry reading by Sister Isra Ghazi. Let's welcome her after Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Patience is a virtue, it sounds just as sweet, but she is breathing patience, and in her heart there is no defeat. The very light of the heavens was adorned when patience herself was born from the flower of eternal purity, who cried heavy tears at her daughter's afflictions, for verily she would face tragedy after tragedy. But like a pillar of faith she stands, grounded, unshakable, willing to demand justice from her oppressors, from every oppressor. Do we follow the ways of her? Would the crown of patience be proud of those who serve? Do we care for the orphans she carried? Do we pray for the martyrs she buried? Is Karbala just a name, and do we shout labbaik in vain? Do we stand with the heroes of today? Do we allow oppressive regimes to remain as we stand in silence? Patience is not silent. Patience does not heed. Patience stood firm in the court of Yazid, praying, Ya Allah, please let the people know and let the record show that beauty was all I saw as my family was slain upon the hot plains of Karbala. They were rushed towards their graves with such honor, and this is the lofty status of a martyr, to shake the very core of an unjust reign, to create spaces in remembrance of her brother Hussein. May every breath be a majlis and every home a Husayniyya, to breathe the life of Abu Abdullah, the grandson of Muhammad al-Nabi al-Rahmah. For patience was born and patience never died, and because of patience our hearts remain alive with Hussein. Patience veiled, lit by her sun and her moon, the very mountains were created for us to look to and remember patience. Salat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. After the day of Ashura, they asked Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam about the calamities and what they had to endure. And she replied saying, I saw nothing but beauty. And here we are, more than 1,000 years later. We're thousands of miles away from Karbala. Here we are, a group of believers, a group of Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, gathering here to mourn her, to remember her, and to learn from her strength. And more importantly, to make sure that this continue with their kids for generations to come. So may Allah accept your a'mal, may Allah accept all the deeds that you guys have done in the last 10 days. We thank you all for attending the majalis. We thank you for your support, your time, your volunteering time. Thanks you for supporting the sponsoring majalis, and of course supporting the new community center, inshallah, that we are in a process of planning for. We thank those who have contributed, and we tell you that it's still the opportunity is still out there, open for those of you who still want to do and support us in the remaining days of Ashura or during our program. We also wanted to let you know that the program is continuing. We have one more night tomorrow. We have a guest speaker, Samah Sayyid Muhammad Bakr Qazwini, 8:30 p.m. Will be followed by Salat Jama'ah and Dua Kumail. We also wanted you to recite the Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha for the souls of all the marhumin who supported us during this program, and for the soul of a dear sister that we lost last year around this time, Sister Hana Fawaz. And for your marhumin as well, let's recite Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha after Salat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Also want to remind everyone that we have the Usul al-Din crash course that will happen starting next Monday. It's a 4 sessions course, Monday and Wednesday, for 4 sessions starting on next Monday. That course would require sign up. The details are on the flyer that has been sent out if you would like to register. Tonight we have a very special guest, Hajjah Najah Bazzy. Hajjah Najah is an internationally recognized humanitarian. She's an interfaith leader and a founder of Zaman International, a nonprofit organization that empowers marginalized women and children to break the cycle of poverty, and helped more than 2.8 million people in 20 countries since 2010. She has been recognized worldwide, including as one of the top 6 Muslim female thought leaders by Global Woman magazine in 2022. Also in People's Magazine's Woman Changing the World issue 2020, and as a 2019 top 10 CNN heroes. Hajjah Najah also was among the pioneers for establishing English majalis and programs for the youth in Michigan through the YMA, and continues to serve the youth of the community through the MYC. Not to mention that Hajjah Najah is the go-to for Mecca for any advice and help all the time. Thank you, Hajjah, for all what you do for the community. We highly appreciate that, and I'm very honored to welcome Hajjah Najah tonight with a loud salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you, Dr. Wasim, for that too much introduction. It's my honor to serve. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطاهرين الطيبين المعصومين. Loud salawat على محمد وآل محمد. In the name of God Almighty, most gracious, most merciful, may the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, his holy progeny, the pure, the good, the immaculate. I wish each and every one of you, my brothers and sisters, and my dearest scholar, Sayyid Saleh, a real sincere condolences and salam as we pass through these 10 days of Ashura. Salu ala Muhammadan wa ali Muhammad. I have the honor of having my mother with us today here at Mecca. And I will tell you that she is not only a blessing in our family, but she will be a blessing to Mecca as well. And I know that she's so very dear to Sayyid Saleh and to Hajjah Raya and to the entire Qazwini family. They consider her their mother as well. And so we honor and we pay our respect to her today as she visits with us. Inshallah, she'll be a barakah tonight for everyone's generosity. So let us begin the journey of Zainab. I want us to all, we come through these 10 days. And for those of you who may not know as much about Muharram, I don't want to overspeak because many of you know the story so very well. But for those who may be new to the concept of Ashura, just to bring us all in alignment, that while January is the first of the solar calendar, Muharram is the first of the Hijri calendar. It's the first month of the Islamic calendar. And while the Gregorian calendar goes by the sun, we go by the moon. And so I just find it somehow almost odd that on December 31st, the world is shouting and screaming and celebrating, and the world is lit up. While for Muslims, the first month of Muharram is tragic and full of tears and full of sorrow and full of heartfelt grief that comes from a place that we don't experience any other grief like this in our lives. The grief is so very deep. It's so very much a part of our souls. And for those of you who may be a little unfamiliar, and even if you're online listening, we welcome you to the word Ashura. Its root comes from the number 10, meaning that it is the 10th day of the month of Muharram, and the 10th day is the day of the actual tragedy, but not to take away from the journey, from the first day that Imam Hussein leaves Medina. Since you've been listening to the majalis for the past 10 nights, today is the 11th night, and since you have been listening and crying, I wanted to shine a little bit more light on the life of Lady Zainab, alayhi salam. So I want you for a few moments to just kind of reflect, and let's look back. Let's look at the life of this noble Sayyida Zainab. Let's talk about her birth. I want you to seriously enter with me a moment in time over 1,465 years ago. It's a long time ago, yet she's so relevant as we stand here and honor her tonight. And I want you to enter a scene of her birth. Enter it in your minds and enter it in your heart and enter it with your soul. And as you enter this moment of her birth, I want you to imagine the most glorified Fatima Zahra, her mother, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad. In those days, the fathers did not enter the rooms when the mothers delivered their babies. So Sayyidah Zainab is born, and she's then handed over to her father, Imam Ali. Imam Ali alayhi salam takes this beautiful baby, Zainab, not yet named. And imagine this moment that we all have in our lives when we're parents, and that baby comes to you. And I will cry a lot through this, I can't help it. And I know you will too, but it's okay, they deserve our tears. In that moment when the mother gives over the child to the father, and Lady Fatima alayhi salatu wasalam says to Imam Ali, her husband, what should we name her? And Imam Ali says, I will not precede the messenger of God. Enter Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Imam Ali had already read the adhan in her right ear and the iqama in her left ear. So this baby that is with Imam Ali hears the voice of the commander of the faithful, first adhan in her ear. What a lucky baby she is to be held by him, to have him as her father and Fatima as her mother. When the Prophet comes, of course, Imam Ali is giving this precious baby, their first baby girl, over to Prophet Muhammad. He takes baby Zainab and he holds her close to his chest. And as he holds her, she is able to hear his heartbeat because he holds her and he coddles her like this to his chest. And we know babies can hear. They can hear the heartbeat of their mother. Allah has made the perfect design. He's placed her mother's arms in a certain place to coddle a baby and hold her. So Prophet Muhammad is holding baby Zainab, and he begins to tear and he begins to cry. And Fatima's looking on, wondering, why is her father crying? Imagine that baby Zainab's ear is on the heart of the Prophet of God, the last and final messenger of God, the heart that beats with revelation that has been imbued in it. The holiest heart in all of humanity is what she's listening to. Imagine. Imagine that she's listening to the heart of divine revelation and the direct words of God inscribed on the heart of her grandfather. Imagine then that Imam Ali says to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and what will be her name? And Prophet Muhammad responds and says, I will not speak, I will not precede my Lord. And he waits. Archangel Gabriel alayhi salam, Jibreel, descends down, and he joins them in the room. And the Prophet is still tearing and crying. And he's holding this beautiful baby. And Jibreel, the Archangel Gabriel, gives his salams and his congratulations. And he says that Allah Most High says her name will be Zainab. Profound. The word, the name Zainab, the feminine of Zain, it wasn't a new name in the Arabian desert. There were Zainabs before Zainab, but none of whom were named by God. Zainab, when you break down the root word of the name, in English it doesn't know justice. You can't find the right English word for it. But let's just find a metaphor, like the apple of her father's eye, the decoration of her father, because Zain is to decorate, to zayin, to decorate, to make something beautiful. And Ab is father. Zainab comes together as the daughter of Ali. And throughout her life, she will also be known as the one who was the daughter of Ali, often referred to by her father for her eloquence, for her dedication, for her steadfastness. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But then Fatima enters again and asks her father, "O father, why is it that you weep as you hold Zainab?" And he reveals to Fatima to Zahra, imagine that you have a newborn mothers. Just imagine, fathers with new babies. And the prophet reveals that he has received the prophecy of what will happen in Zainab's life. And he cries for her, and he cries with them, knowing that her life would have to endure tragedies beyond belief, some of the most horrific human tragedies ever to fall upon our humanity. Let's fast forward, and let's move now to not just her strength, but how she attained her strength, her lineage. Let's talk and think for a moment as you think about her grandfather. You think about who her grandfather is. We often refer to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the prophet of God, the messenger of God, but what we sometimes fail to realize, it's not just the messenger of God, it is the seal of prophethood for all of humanity. And we know this, it's proven, because there's not been another prophet to follow him, nor has there been another revelation that has come after him. So Muhammad is not just Muhammad. Muhammad is Adam and Noah. He is Moses, and he is Jesus, and he is Muhammad, and he is everything in between. He is the culmination and the ultimate chosen for the seal of prophethood. He is loving. He is merciful. He is the embodiment of God's word in the Holy Quran. And she's raised by him. What should we expect from Zainab? Let's look to her grandmother, Khadijah. We often forget Khadijah. We don't speak enough about her. Yet without her greatness, Islam would not be what Islam is. A woman, by some projections, 15 years the senior of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Khadijah stands as one of the most noble figures in human history and in all of womanhood. Khadijah stands in her nobility, in her generosity, in her trust, in her first to receive Rasulullah ﷺ when he receives revelation, the first to believe in him unequivocally. Khadijah, her DNA runs through Zainab's veins, through her arteries, through Fatima Zahra. Let's turn to Fatima, the mother of Zainab. Fatima is Fatima, and there is no description other than Fatima is Fatima, as the book says about her. The prophet of God himself, the seal of Nubuwah, says that she is the lady of all of the worlds of paradise and paradise. Fatima Zahra holds, not just on earth, but in heaven, the most esteemed position. What would we expect from Zainab if her mother is Fatima? What do we expect of Zainab when Imam Hassan, is her brother? When Imam Hussein is her brother? And you know, they were birthed in Medina. We should not forget these three children. Some estimates say 1 to 5 years after Rasulullah ﷺ went to Medina. Regardless of that time, Medina became the first Islamic state ever created. And so we're talking about the founding family of Islam, the founding family of Medina. We're talking about a family who is couched in divine guidance. So what do we expect from Zainab when her older brothers are Hassan and Hussein? And what do we know of them? That they are Shabab Ahl Jannah, that they are the youth of paradise, the only two people to get that title. And what of her father? What of her father for a moment when the wall of the Kaaba, the sanctuary of God on earth, opens for his mother in his holy birth to be there inside the Kaaba? No other human being has that status, none whatsoever. And as those of you who've returned from Hajj saw and witnessed, and those of you who've gone to Hajj, that crack in the wall remains as a testimony to Imam Ali's greatness. No matter how much they try to seal it, it continues to not be something that comes together perfectly because it stands as a witness. The Kaaba is witnessing for Imam Ali his greatness. So this is Zainab's family. So what should we expect from Zainab? Now, it's easy to say, well, she had all of the fixings of a divine family that raised her to be a soldier for Islam. This is true. But she still had a free will. The Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet Muhammad, prophets before him, they're human beings. They're not superhuman. They're human. And this is something we must remember. They still have to develop their spiritual quotient. They still have choices to make. During the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, one of the lessons that I love so much in leadership is this. When Prophet Muhammad went to sign that treaty so that there could be peace between the Meccans and Medina, he did not use his name, Messenger of God. And Imam Ali did not want him to sign this treaty without using that title. Prophet Muhammad said, sign it without my title. That's a choice the Prophet made to bring peace to the region. My point is, somehow we have it in our heads that all their decisions are made for them. That is not true. They have to make hard choices. They have to choose between right and wrong and evil and good. Karbala is not just a war, a political war. While it was political in its nature, the Umayyad dynasty was a war against the Prophet's family between pure evil and pure good. And had it not been for the war between evil and good, we would not be standing here commemorating this. That's true of many wars that happen, but this one is unique. What makes Karbala unique, as we've examined over the past 10 days, is that it is the story unlike any other story in our human history, and this is true. I agree there have been massacres of millions, but the massacre of a holy prophet's family that has women and children, that has components of family and marriage and siblings and so on and so forth, that in and of itself is unique to Karbala. I will take a moment to say that I do believe, inshallah, and I think you share me in this belief, that that battle for evil and good, this is the battle in Gaza. And I do believe with all of my heart that goodness will always win. Goodness must always prevail on earth. So back to our beautiful Zainab. Let's fast forward to when she's a little bit older. When we think about Zainab, we think about her in Karbala, but we don't understand is Zainab was a scholar. Zainab received her teachings from her brothers, from her father, from her grandfather. She was a scholar of the highest level of scholars. She was a teacher. She held classes for women. She was inspirational. She taught Islamic law. All of this Zainab did. The women of Prophet Muhammad's family, Fatima, Zahra, Zainab, they didn't just sit idle and wait for their father and their brothers to do all of the work. They participated. And you should too. You should participate in your communities. You should bring the knowledge that you have forward. Knowledge does not belong to men only. Allah created our brains to have equal functions. And sometimes in our human development, you even have an edge. Sayyida Zainab in Karbala, as hard as it was and as difficult as the scenes are, we say she stood valiant. She did. But let me ask you a question, serious question, and take yourselves to those moments and to that horrific scene. The scene of a mother losing her two boys. Aun and Muhammad were her children. Can you imagine a mother, Zainab, the mother, having had to lose her two boys, teenagers? She loses her nephews. She loses the husbands of the widows that she has to care for. She loses her brother Al-Abbas, who for that family stood as the staunch defender of the family. She loses her brother Hussein, as we all know. But not that that isn't enough. She then, as we know, is taken into captivity. Sometimes I think to myself, what can be worse? What she saw and had to endure, or moving from whatever sense of freedom she had and the women and the children had and the protection they had in Medina to being in captivity. To be in captivity. We're talking about chains. We're talking about the Prophet's family, his women, who had to be paraded from Karbala to Kufa. And why to Kufa? To poke Imam Ali in the eye, which they will never do. And to parade the heads of the martyrs and the family, to try their very best with their propaganda to kill the message, not just of Hussein, to kill the message of Islam, to put an end to it, because it's a battle between good and evil and power versus piety. Power and piety collided in Karbala. So when we think of Zainab and we think of her in captivity, and we think of her and the women of Karbala and the children mounted on these unsaddled animals, you know how brutal that is? How much pain that is? How much suffering that is? The grief alone. Do you know when we lose somebody, what happens in our brains? I teach grief. I have a specialty in end of life. Do you know that the very first thing your brain does is it acts like a shock absorber and it denies? It goes through denial. No, that couldn't have happened. No, no way, no way. Even when you know it's coming at the moment of death and you're seeing your loved one take their last breath, your brain denies it. It's a gift God has given us so that we can cope with what's ahead of us. Can you imagine that they had no time to deny anything, no time for grief? And I would say not even time for anger. The natural phases of grief, they have stages of grief. They didn't even have that because they were in survival mode. But as they're taken into captivity and they lose their hijabs, in order to make them feel that they've lost their honor, they strip them of their hijabs and they parade them through the streets. And the propaganda machine, which lasted 90 years, propagated that these were the enemies. These are the enemies of Islam. Let me ask you a question. If you saw a parade like that with women and children in chains paraded through your city streets, would you really think that they were the enemies? Or would your mind start to wonder, who did this to these people? And who are these people? Do you know that the people of Kufa did not even know that this was the Prophet's family? This is how disgraceful the propaganda machine is, and in many ways continues to be this day. No doubt. Do you know that on the day of Ashura, 80% of the Muslim Ummah is celebrating? They're having a holiday. Do you know that? Do you know why? Because, again, the big hoax is that Moses, alayhi salatu wasalam, parted the sea, and the Jews went to salvation, and Pharaoh was drowned. So it's a day of fasting and celebration. While the other 20%, us, we are crying, we are grieving so deeply that we can hardly breathe, and we are renewing our commitment to justice. 20% renewing the commitment to justice. So when I say the propaganda is still here, it's still here. I dare say that to be a follower of Ahlul Bayt is a privilege. If you're born into it and you accept it because you're born into it, go back and do your homework. You should earn it. You should study. You should understand why you are a follower of Ahlul Bayt, that it's logical, that it makes sense, that history tells a certain story, and that it is obvious Imam Ali was the rightful Khalifa. Obvious that he was the successor of Prophet Muhammad. But you have to dig. Don't just take this and swallow this as sweet-tasting medicine. That doesn't make you a true follower of Ahlul Bayt, brothers and sisters. The commitment to Ahlul Bayt, to social justice, to what they stand for, to what they sacrificed. That sense of nobility, to be that follower of Ahlul Bayt, this is something very, very, very special. And it's a gift that's been given to you. Learn it, study it, dig deep into it, and be revived by it. It is a compass for how we live our lives. It's our moral compass. It's what gives us courage. But let's follow Sayyidah Zainab from Kufa to the Sham, to Damascus. Now, you might wonder, like, why was she in Damascus? Because the Umayyad dynasty, after the death of Imam Ali, Muawiyah came to power, as you know. Well, he established the Sham, Damascus, as his headquarters. And for 90 years, the headquarters of the Muslim Ummah was there in Sham, in Syria. So as she's paraded, and they're paraded into this palace of Yazid, and you all know the story. You all know what she did and what she said. But I want to reflect for a moment, and the most profound statement that keeps ringing in the ears of everyone and happens to be on the shirts here in Mecca, that I saw no beauty. Yazid thought, and she schooled them. This is why Zainab alayhi salatu wasalam, she's one of my sheroes. She schooled Yazid so badly. I tell you, we should all be in that moment. when Lady Zainab, the daughter of Ali and Fatima and granddaughter of Prophet Muhammad alayhum salatu wassalam, stood in the face of evil. The very face of evil stands purity. And she looks the evil in the face, and she says, and I'm paraphrasing because the speech is long, you should look it up, you should read it if you're not familiar with it. Do you think these chains, do you think to chain us is going to dishonor us? You've dishonored yourself. And she goes at him, and the public is listening, and the public wakes up because they're like in a stupor because everybody drank the Kool-Aid, they drank the propaganda, and they understand who Zainab is, and they realized what Yazid did. That was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the end. And although the dynasty continued on for years after that, that was the beginning of the end. You know, metaphorically, let me just say this. It's true, in wartime, back then, they did heinous things, beheading and the tragedies of Imam Hussein. I mean, when we hear these stories, we cry so. The depth of the grief is something that's not normal. It's not understood in words. It comes from a place, someplace else. I don't know where it comes from. But in many ways, metaphorically, she beheaded him because she hid him where it hurts the most. Because what she did was she declared how low he is of a human being. She brought him so far down that he could not even get up again. She TKO'd him, as we say, in a way that slammed him without revival. He may have been breathing, but he was a breathing dead person after Zainab. This is the truth. She heads back to Medina. Now, remember, Imam Zain al-Abidin is the Imam. And I'll have to conclude because we're out of time. We have to go to Salah. But I just want to finish by saying this. She had to protect Imam Zain al-Abidin. Imam Zain al-Abidin could not speak because they would kill him. So her very role to defend him, to defend Islam, she's still carrying it. She's still carrying through with it. She's the trustee of her mother and delivers the kiss on the neck and the chest. She's the trustee of her father. She's the trustee of her grandfather. She is the trustee of Allah's message on earth. This is Zainab. But she was so powerful in her speech and in her teachings and in teaching what happened, the eyewitness, Zainab, and the women and the children, the witnesses. She built a counter propaganda. But this propaganda was sacred because it was the truth. And because she did that, and because her words had power, because she had the eloquence of her father, because she has the grace of her mother, and because she has the stature of her grandfather, Zainab is summoned back to the Sham. Do you ever wonder why you go visit her in the Sham? Have you ever thought about how she got back there? Do you know that Zainab's death is a mystery? We don't really know how she died. Some say she died 1 year later. Some say she died a couple years later. We don't really know. But what we do know, Allahu Akbar, truly God is the best of planners because he planted Zainab's grave in Damascus, where the palace of the Umayyads is located. And millions upon millions upon millions of people visit Zainab every single year. Do you think anyone's visiting Muawiyah and Yazid and the palace of the Umayyads? I don't think so. In fact, you won't believe what happens in those places. It's not very attractive. So in conclusion, whether it's a male or female, brother or sister, I often say, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, we should aspire to walk like Zainab. We should aspire to speak like Zainab. We should aspire to work like Zainab. We should take care of the orphans and the widows like Zainab. She built the institution for the widows and the orphans. We should do what she did, and we should speak out when things are wrong. And we should hold steadfast to all that is good, and we should reject all that is evil in our everyday lives, in every minute of every day of our lives. And we should bless this earth and bless each other with nothing but goodness. We should quiet our tongues and put our hands and feet to work. This is what Zainab wants. When we cry for them, it's because it comes from a place of love. But when we serve them, it means that their message will continue on to eternity. I believe in this. I wish to thank you, Sayyid Salah, for having me. It's been a while since I've spoken. I want to appreciate everyone that's helping Mecca. This is a long-time dream, and I think that the time is right. We have the right scholar. We have a beautiful community here. I love the diversity of this community, young families. It's kind of like building Medina, but we're called Mecca. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to make an appeal. Give as much as you can to help this project get off the ground. It's amazing, and it's a miracle in and of itself that the land has already been purchased and paid for. What's left is going to be easy, but don't miss the opportunity to help. However you can help, whatever it may be, put your hands in it and build a community. And let's keep these majalis moving in a way that is positive and healthy. And inshallah, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, next year or the year after, we will be in the new place and we'll be having the majalis of Imam al-Hussein and Ahlul Bayt and so much more. I thank you for your time. Adham Allah ajurukum. I know it's Salah time. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to speak with you, and forgive me for anything I may have said that may have been incorrect. But I appreciate you all being here. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Hajjah Najah. We really appreciate you being here, and may Allah bless you. Brothers and sisters, we have Brother Ali Rida here. He's going to do some quick recitation for Al-Atmiya, and then inshallah we'll move to the prayer room for Salat al-Jama'ah.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. If you want to participate in the Satmiya, you can just recite what I'm going to say for Ajr and Tawab for Majlis Imam Hussein. Hussein, Abbas, Abbas, Hussein, near the river, near the river. Hussein, Abbas, Abbas, Hussein, near the river, near the river. Last time, Hussein, Abbas, Abbas, Hussein, near the river, near the river. Soon, soon, I will see the moon near the river, near the river. No hands and no eye, just tears and goodbye, just tears and goodbye. Near the river, near the river. Hussein, Abbas, Abbas, Hussein. A river of painful tears, surrounded by bleeding spears. Children with thirst and in their stares, shrouded with their cries and fears. At noon, you will see my wound near the river, near the river. Every breath a sigh, no hands and no eye, just tears and goodbye. Near the river, near the river. Hussein, Abbas. Near the river, darkness overcame my sight. Every breath Abbas, my plight. Zainab's night now with no light. On the shore you're left and right, alone, broken with no backbone. Near the river, near the river. How can you there lie? No hands and no eye, just tears and goodbye. Near the river, near the river. Hussein, Abbas, Abbas, Hussein. Near the river, Zainab awaits at your tent. How can I tell her you went? If you're lost, my back it's bent. How can I see her lament? She waits, opened heaven's gates. Near the river, near the river, ripped open the sky. No hands and no eye, just tears and goodbye. Near the river, near the river. Hussein, Abbas, Abbas, Hussein, near the river. Sukaina calls, oh uncle, could it be true that you fell? I will not believe it till I see father not stand still. Daughter, I left my banner near the river, near the river. From you he is shy, no hands and no eye, just tears and goodbye. Near the river, near the river. Hussein, Abbas, Abbas, Hussein, near the river, near the river. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد.